Thank you. Just coming up to 25 minutes to 8. It used to be one of the eccentric fringe concerns of the Liberal Party. You'd find very earnest people at party conferences who would bend your ear on the subject of land value taxation. Well, the eccentrics are eccentrics no more, it seems, because land value tax is not only interesting academic economists, but it's also coming to the House of Commons. The Green Party MP, Caroline Lucas, is pressing for a bill to tax land instead of business rates and council tax. That bill didn't quite make it yesterday, but is going to get to be debated in the Commons reasonably soon. Caroline Lucas is on the line. So is John Stewart, who's Director of Economic Affairs at the Home Builders Federation. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Explain how it works, Caroline Lucas.
Well, essentially, as you say, it would replace council tax and business rates, and it's a levy on the value of land according to its permitted use, irrespective of how it's currently being used. So essentially, there'd be no incentive to have land banks, which are used, for speculation, for example, or to leave land derelict in the hope of waiting for it to increase in value.
And the point is that the things that have increased the value of the land, like the presence of a good transport link or something, those things would then make the tax on that property or that piece of land higher than it would otherwise be.
Yes, at the moment, if you have an existing home and then the government spends taxpayers' money on, let's say, a tube station just up the road from you, the value of that property, your property, will increase considerably, even though you've done nothing yourself personally, if you like, to deserve that increase. So the idea is to make sure that the community is able to claim back some of the value that accrues to property owners when their property goes up in value because of public money spent on that nearby infrastructure. But crucially, I think, the point about this is as well that not only would it, I think, increase the stock of affordable housing, because you wouldn't have the kind of land banks, the land speculation that we have now, but it would also be much fairer. Under the current system, people in cheaper homes pay a far higher proportion of council tax than those living in expensive ones. A family, for example, living in a house for around £320,000 only has to pay twice as much council tax as a family living in one that costs just £68,000, even though their home is 4 times more valuable. So it's fairer, it would bring more affordable housing, and it would also be a way of really damping down on property speculation.
John Stewart?
I can only really comment on it from the housing developer's perspective. Obviously, it's not appropriate for us to talk about the effect on individual homes.
Yeah, so once a home has been built, you're not getting into this argument. But what about that point about land banks?
Well, a housing developer, the clue's in the name, they make their money by developing land, and generally housing developers don't just sit on land. If they do...
but you do sit on land, don't you, in order to wait until the moment is right for the development to be made. I mean, that's what is widely believed. Is it really not the case?
No, it's not the case with housing developers. If a housing developer is sitting on land and not developing it, there'll usually be a very good reason for that. So, for example, a small developer might get a planning permission and not develop the land because they can't get development finance. Now, our concern would be if there's then a tax on that land that makes his problems even worse. A site might not be developed because it's not viable. If you think back to 2007, an apartment building in a town centre by 2009 wasn't remotely viable. If you start taxing that land, you merely make the viability even worse.
That's an important point then, Caroline Lucas, because then actually you're damaging the one thing, one of the things that you want to improve, which is the supply of housing.
Yeah, and I think that's why, and what my bill is calling for, is for a full investigation on this. I don't buy the line that property developers aren't sitting on land banks. We know they are. It's been estimated there are about 400,000 plots that have planning permission and they haven't been brought into use. Now, that's not only because people are sitting on them waiting for the value to increase, and I take the point that obviously, credit for people to get the mortgages is also a critical issue. But I think when you've got people like the OECD, the IMF, the Institute for Fiscal Studies, all of them saying that this is an idea whose time has come, it needs to be looked at, then what I'm asking for in my bill is for the Treasury to do a full investigation, to look at all of the different issues. And my belief is that in actual fact there are so many other issues which are, being the ones that are preventing property coming forward, that actually this land value taxation would make a significant difference.
And perhaps, John Stewart, some sort of exemption could be made where it was genuinely proven or the case was genuinely made that it would otherwise be damaging for a parcel of land to be taxed. It would be unreasonable.
I'm not sure whether you could work out exemptions like that, but we'd certainly need to be very, very careful. The 400,000 that Caroline quotes, roughly half of those from the people who produce that information are under development. Now we're going to start taxing land that is being developed. I think our real fear is that it could lead to a reduction in the amount of land coming forward for housing development, and the point you made, Justin, it could lead to fewer homes being built.
That's really, I mean, all of the
Briefly.
evidence is pointing in the other direction. If you look what's happened in places where they've used this, in places like Australia or New Zealand or parts of the US, the opposite has happened. And as I say, when you've got really heavyweight reports that have looked into all of this, they conclude that it's far more likely that it would actually damp down property speculation. And quite understand why property developers don't like it very much, because they've done very well, thank you, out of the current system. But if you want more affordable housing, this has got to be part of the solution.
Let's leave it there for the time being. But Caroline Lucas, you were squeezed out yesterday, weren't you? When does your bill actually? I mean, are you getting the opportunity to bring it to the floor of the House?
Well, I was just listening to you talking about the gambling bill that got talked out, and that's what did for it. Mine was number 2. So as well as talking about land value taxation, I'm going to come back and talk about parliamentary reform, if I might, because it's a crazy system of trying to do
take it all
business.
on while you've got the time. Caroline
Exactly.
Lucas, John Stewart as well. Thanks.
The time is now 20 to 8.